Hey everyone, this is my first time posting, but I need to get this off my chest. If you've been through something like this, I'd appreciate advice or just someone to tell me I'm not crazy for feeling like this. My name's Tommy. I'm 32 and I thought I had it all, a good job, a decent home, and most importantly my wife Leah, who I adored. She's 31, a dancer at a local studio, and I used to joke that her grace made up for my lack of rhythm on the dance floor. For 7 years, we were that couple, married young, always laughing, and everyone said we were perfect together. Things weren't always easy. Work stress crept in and I started feeling Leah pull away. I chalked it up to her spending more time with her best friend Susie, who never liked me much. Susie's the type who thrives on drama, always pushing Leah to live her best life, which usually meant spending weekends out late and dodging my calls. It all started unraveling 2 months ago. Leah told me she was going on a girls' trip with Susie to Miami. I didn't think much of it. Leah works hard and deserves a break. But something felt off. She didn't ask me to help pack, didn't kiss me goodbye like she always does, and when I said, "Send me pictures," she just laughed and said, "Don't worry, babe, I'll be busy." The week she was gone was miserable. She barely texted, ignored my calls, and when she did reply it was vague, having fun. Tito. Then came the pictures. It wasn't Leah who sent them, it was Susie. She posted them all over social media. Leah on a yacht in bikinis I'd never seen, holding cocktails in one hand and leaning on some guy in another. My heart sank. That guy wasn't just some guy. It was Marcus, Leah's coworker. You know that gut feeling when you know something's wrong, but you don't want to believe it? That was me, scrolling through Susie's stories at 3 a.m., telling myself maybe it's innocent. Maybe they're just co-workers. But the comments told a different story. Susie had captioned one picture of Leah and Marcus laughing on the beach with "cutest couple of the year." Someone even commented, "Wait, isn't Leah married?" And Susie replied with a smirking emoji. I barely slept that night, waiting for Leah's return. Leah came home 2 days later, dragging her suitcase through the door like everything was normal. She even gave me this tired smile and said, "Miss me?" I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, staring at her, my chest feeling like it was going to cave in. "Had a good trip?" I asked, my voice tight. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to catch it. "Yeah, it was fun. Relaxing. Just what I needed." She tried to brush past me, but I wasn't letting her off that easily. "What about Marcus? Did he have fun too?" The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram and shoved it in her face. "This. The yacht. The beach. You and Marcus looking like you're auditioning for a rom-com." She froze, then laughed nervously. "You're being ridiculous, Tommy. Those are just pictures. We're co-workers. That's all." I wanted to believe her, I really did, but my gut wouldn't let me. "Why didn't you tell me he was going? Why didn't you answer my calls?" She sighed like she was the one being inconvenienced. "Because I knew you'd react like this. He just happened to be in Miami at the same time. It wasn't planned. Susie invited him to hang out a couple of times. That's it." Her excuses felt so rehearsed, like she'd been practicing this speech the whole flight home. "You expect me to believe this is all a coincidence?" I asked, my voice rising. "Can we not do this right now? I'm tired, Tommy. I just got back." She grabbed her suitcase and started heading upstairs, but I followed her. "Did you cheat on me?" I asked point blank. Leah stopped in her tracks and turned to face me. Her eyes were wide like she couldn't believe I'd even ask. "Of course not. I would never do that to you." But her tone was defensive, not reassuring. I wanted to push her for answers, to demand the truth, but something in her expression told me I wasn't going to get it, not that night. So I backed off, letting her retreat to the bedroom while I sat in the living room, staring at those pictures on my phone until the screen burned my eyes. The next day I decided to dig deeper. I couldn't just let it go. Every time I thought about those pictures, my stomach twisted. Leah had been distant for months and now this? Something wasn't adding up. While Leah was at work, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through her phone. Yeah, I know it's not the most honorable move, but I needed answers. At first, everything seemed normal. Texts from her mom, her friends, a few work emails. But then I saw a message thread with Marcus. My hands started shaking as I opened it. Most of the texts were mundane, work stuff, jokes about their boss, but then I scrolled back to the week of the trip. "Can't wait to see you tonight," Marcus had written. "Me too, don't forget the champagne," Leah replied. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. There was more. "Last night was amazing. Wish we didn't have to go back to reality." "Same here. I'll never forget it." It was all there in black and white. The proof I didn't want but knew I'd find. When Leah got home that evening, I confronted her again, this time armed with the texts. I'll never forget the look on her face, half shock, half anger. "You went through my phone?" she snapped. "Don't turn this on me," I fired back, holding up my own phone. "What's this about champagne? And last night being amazing? Are you still going to stand there and tell me nothing happened?" She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for the right excuse. Finally she said, "It wasn't what you think. We were just having fun. It didn't mean anything." Didn't mean anything? I could barely get the words out. "You lied to me, Leah. You lied to my face. I trusted you." She started crying then, real tears, but I wasn't moved. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Tommy. I was confused. Things haven't been great between us and Marcus was just there. But it didn't go that far, I swear." I laughed bitterly. "How far did it go, Leah? Because this sure doesn't look innocent." She didn't answer, just kept crying and muttering, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." At that moment, I realized I didn't care about her excuses anymore. Whatever had happened between her and Marcus, she'd crossed a line. And no amount of tears or apologies could undo that. I slept on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how my life had turned into this mess. The next morning I called a locksmith. The locksmith showed up around noon. While he worked on changing the locks, I just sat in the kitchen trying to process everything. This wasn't how my life was supposed to go. 7 years of marriage, thrown away for what? A fling. Leah was at the studio, probably thinking everything would blow over if she cried enough. She didn't realize I was done playing the fool. When the locksmith finished, I paid him, thanked him, and then sat down to write Leah a letter. I didn't trust myself to have a calm conversation with her face to face. My emotions were all over the place, and I didn't want to give her any more chances to spin lies. The letter was short and to the point. "Leah, I know what you did and I can't forgive it. Our marriage is over. Your things are packed and in the garage. Don't try to come inside, I've changed the locks. I'll contact a lawyer tomorrow to start the divorce process. If you want to explain yourself, you can do it through email. But as of now, I have nothing more to say to you. Tommy." It felt surreal, writing those words. Part of me wanted to tear up the letter, call her and beg her to fix things. But the stronger part of me, the one that remembered the betrayal, the lies, the pictures, knew this was the only way forward. By the time Leah came home, I was sitting in my truck, parked down the street. I watched as she walked up to the front door, tried her key and found it didn't work. At first she looked confused. Then she saw the letter taped to the door. I'll never forget the moment she read it. Her face crumpled and she started banging on the door, shouting my name. "Tommy. Please let me in. We can talk about this." I stayed in the truck, my heart pounding. Watching her cry like that was gut-wrenching, but I reminded myself of everything she'd done. I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. Eventually she gave up and went to the garage. When she saw her suitcases stacked neatly by the door, she broke down again, sitting on the driveway and sobbing. I waited until she got into her car and drove off before I went back inside. The silence of the house hit me like a wave, but for the first time in months it felt like I could breathe again. That night I called my lawyer. The day after Leah found the letter, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, voicemails, it was non-stop. She even tried reaching out through some of our mutual friends, asking them to talk some sense into me. Most of them stayed neutral, but one of her friends, Susie, was a different story. She called me while I was having coffee, her voice sharp and dripping with attitude. "Tommy, what the hell are you doing? Changing the locks? throwing her stuff out like she's trash. I let her rant for a minute before cutting her off. Susie, this isn't your business. Leah betrayed me and I'm done. If you're calling to defend her, save your breath. Oh, come on, she scoffed. It was just a little fling. You're seriously going to blow up your whole marriage over one mistake? Grow up. Hearing her say that made my blood boil. A mistake? She lied to me, snuck around behind my back, and then tried to gaslight me when I confronted her. If you think that's just a mistake, I feel sorry for whoever's dumb enough to date you. That shut her up for a second, but then she muttered, you were never good enough for her anyway. I hung up after that. I wasn't about to waste another second listening to her defend Leah's behavior. Later that day, Leah finally sent an email. It was long like essay length and full of apologies. She admitted to sleeping with Marcus during the trip, though she claimed it only happened once and that she instantly regretted it. Tommy, she wrote, I never meant to hurt you. I was in a bad place emotionally, and Marcus made me feel wanted in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. But it was a mistake, a horrible, stupid mistake, and it's you I love. Please don't throw everything we've built away because of this. I read the email 3 times, trying to decide how I felt. On one hand, her admission gave me closure. On the other hand, her excuses felt like another slap in the face. She made a choice, and now she was scrambling to fix the mess she created. I didn't reply. Instead, I spent the evening packing up anything that reminded me of her. Photos, mementos, little knickknacks she'd bought for the house. By the time I was done, I had 2 boxes full of memories I no longer wanted. I shoved them into the attic and poured myself a drink, trying to figure out what came next. That night, I called my best friend Nate and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, letting me vent until I ran out of words. You did the right thing, man, he said finally. She broke your trust and there's no coming back from that. Focus on yourself now. Get a fresh start. Easier said than done. The following week was a blur. Between work, talking to my lawyer, and dodging Leah's attempts to contact me, I barely had time to think. But when I finally stopped moving, the weight of everything hit me hard. I'd lost my wife, my partner, the person I thought I'd grow old with. And even though I knew I'd made the right decision, it still hurt like hell. Leah didn't make things easier. She started emailing me daily, alternating between apologies and pleas for another chance. One email stood out. Tommy, I know I hurt you, but you're not perfect either. For years I felt like I was second place in your life. Your job, your friends, even football always came before me. Marcus wasn't about love or passion, he was about feeling seen again. I know that doesn't excuse what I did, but I need you to understand where I was coming from. I wanted to reply to argue that I'd always put her first. I wanted to list all the ways I'd shown her I cared, planning dates, remembering the little things she liked, supporting her career. But what was the point? She'd made her choices, and no amount of explaining would change what she did. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer just in case. A couple of days later, I heard from Susie again, this time through Nate. Apparently, she was telling people I'd overreacted, painting Leah as the victim of an unreasonable husband. Nate shut her down, but it still annoyed me. Why is she so invested in this? I asked him. You know how Susie is, Nate said. She loves drama. And let's be real, she's probably the one who encouraged Leah to cheat in the first place. That thought stuck with me. Susie had always been a bad influence, pushing Leah to party and make reckless decisions. But blaming her felt like letting Leah off the hook. At the end of the day, Leah was the one who chose to betray me. A few nights later, I was scrolling through social media when I stumbled across a post from Susie. It was a picture of her and Leah at a bar with the caption, "Girls' Night Out." #movingin. I stared at the photo for a long time. Leah didn't look like someone who was heartbroken or full of regret. She looked like someone who was already moving on, laughing and drinking as if nothing had happened. It was like a punch to the gut. While I was here picking up the pieces of my life, she was out there living hers like everything was fine. That was the moment I realized I couldn't keep dwelling on her. She wasn't my problem anymore. The next morning I blocked her email, deleted her number, and unfollowed her on every platform. It was time to focus on myself. Blocking Leah felt like ripping off a bandage. It stung at first, but once it was done, I felt a weird sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't constantly checking my phone, dreading another message or email. But that didn't mean it was easy. The nights were the worst. Lying in bed alone, replaying everything in my head, wondering how I didn't see it coming. A few days later, Nate invited me out to a local bar. "You've been cooped up too long, man. You need to get out, have a drink, talk to someone who isn't your lawyer or me," he said. I wasn't really in the mood, but he insisted, and I figured I owed it to myself to try. When we got there, the place was buzzing, loud enough to drown out my thoughts. Nate ordered us beers and we found a corner table. "Here's to fresh starts," he said, clinking his glass against mine. We were halfway through our drinks when a woman approached us. She was tall, athletic, with a confident smile that immediately grabbed my attention. "Hey Nate," she said, giving him a quick hug. "Angie." "It's been ages," Nate replied. Then he turned to me. "Tommy, this is Angie. She's a personal trainer at my gym." "Nice to meet you," I said, shaking her hand. "Same here," she said, her eyes flicking to Nate. "So, what's the occasion?" Nate grinned. "Getting this guy back out into the world." Angie raised an eyebrow. "Oh. What happened?" I hesitated, not sure how much to share, but Nate jumped in. His wife cheated on him with her coworker. Angie's smile faded. "Ouch. That's rough. You doing okay?" "I'm getting there," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Well," she said, her smile returning, "if you ever need a distraction, I run a fitness class that'll kick your ass. Nothing like a good workout to clear your head." I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. "I might take you up on that." Before she left, Angie gave me her card. "Seriously, give me a call. First class is on me." That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself thinking about Angie. There was something about her energy, strong, no nonsense, but also warm, that stuck with me. Maybe Nate was right. Maybe it was time to start focusing on myself and what made me happy. The next morning, I called Angie and signed up for her class. Angie's fitness class was no joke. From the moment I walked in, she had me working muscles I didn't even know I had. Burpees, squats, push-ups. By the end of the hour, I was drenched in sweat and barely able to stand. "You survived," Angie said with a grin as I collapsed onto a bench. "That's more than most people can say their first time." "Survived is a strong word," I panted. "Barely hanging on might be more accurate." She laughed and handed me a bottle of water. "You did better than you think. Keep at it and you'll feel like a new man in no time." There was something refreshing about Angie's tough love approach. She didn't baby me or offer meaningless platitudes. She just pushed me to my limit and then gave me the tools to push a little further. Over the next few weeks, I started going to her class regularly. It wasn't just about the workout, it was about having a goal, something to focus on other than the mess my life had become. One day after class, Angie pulled me aside. "You've been killing it lately," she said. "What's your secret?" I shrugged. "Trying to outrun my problems, I guess." Her smile faded, replaced by a look of understanding. "You can't outrun them forever, you know. At some point you have to face them." Her words stuck with me. That night, I sat down and really thought about what I wanted moving forward. Did I want revenge? Closure? Peace? I realized what I wanted most was to feel like myself again, confident, happy, and in control of my life. The next time I saw Angie, I told her about my epiphany. "I'm done letting what Leah did define me," I said. She nodded, her eyes sparkling with approval. "Good. Now let's put that energy into your workout." Over time, I started to notice changes, not just in my body but in my mindset. I was stronger, more focused, and for the first time in months I felt like I was moving forward. And Angie? She became more than just my trainer. She became a friend, someone who didn't pity me or treat me like a victim, but pushed me to be better. One day after class she asked, "So what's next for you?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "But whatever it is, I know it's going to be on my terms." She smiled. "That's the spirit." For the first time since the divorce started, I felt hopeful. The changes Angie helped me make weren't just physical, they were mental too. I started setting small goals for myself, like cooking healthier meals, reading books I'd been putting off, and even tackling some DIY projects around the house. It felt good to take control of my life again, but that didn't mean everything was smooth sailing. Leah popped back into my life like a bad penny about a month after I'd blocked her. It started with a voicemail. "Tommy, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I just need to say this. I'm sorry. I've been seeing a therapist and it's made me realize how much I messed up. You were the best thing that ever happened to me and I threw it away. I know I don't deserve another chance, but I hope one day you can forgive me. Please take care of yourself." I sat there, phone in hand, unsure of how to feel. Part of me wanted to call her back, to tell her exactly how much damage she'd done. But the stronger part of me, the part that had been working so hard to move on, knew better. I deleted the voicemail. When I told Nate about it later, he shook his head. "Man, she's just trying to ease her guilt. Don't let her drag you back into her mess." I knew he was right, but it still stung to hear her voice. Things took an unexpected turn when I ran into Marcus a week later. I was at the grocery store grabbing some stuff for dinner when I saw him in the produce section. He froze when he saw me, his face turning pale. "Tommy," he said, his voice shaky. "Hey man." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at him, all the anger and hurt bubbling to the surface. "You've got some nerve," I finally said. "Look, I'm sorry," he stammered. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. "You didn't mean for it to happen. You slept with my wife, Marcus. That doesn't just happen. You made a choice." He nodded, his eyes darting around like he was looking for an escape route. "You're right. I messed up. I've been trying to move on, but I get it if you hate me." "Hate you?" I laughed bitterly. "No, Marcus. I don't hate you. You're not worth that much energy." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there like the spineless coward he was. Later that night, I told Angie about the encounter. "I'm proud of you," she said. "It takes strength to let go of that kind of anger." "Yeah, well," I said with a shrug, "I'm learning." And I meant it. I wasn't fully healed, not by a long shot, but for the first time I felt like I was headed in the right direction. After the run-in with Marcus, I felt a strange sense of closure. It wasn't forgiveness, not by a long shot, but confronting him made me realize I didn't need an apology or explanation to move forward. He was just another chapter one was ready to close. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started taking on extra projects at work, not just to keep busy but because it reminded me of what I was capable of. My boss even noticed the change, and during a team meeting he pulled me aside to offer a promotion. "You've been stepping up lately," he said. "Keep this up and I see big things for you here." Hearing that gave me a boost I hadn't felt in a long time. It was like a light bulb moment. I could thrive without Leah. But life wasn't all smooth sailing. One night, I was scrolling through social media when I saw a post from one of Leah's old friends. It was a picture of Leah and Marcus, sitting together at a table with a group of people. The caption read, "Fun night out with the crew." I stared at the photo for a long time, my stomach twisting into knots. So that's how it was. While I'd been picking up the pieces of my life, they'd been out, moving on like nothing happened. I debated texting Nate or Angie to vent but decided against it. Instead, I closed the app and went for a run. By the time I got back, my legs were burning and my head was clearer. That night, I realized something. It didn't matter what Leah or Marcus did. Their choices didn't define me or my future. The next time I saw Angie at the gym, I told her about the picture. She gave me a long look, then said, "Good. Let them be each other's problem." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're not wrong." She smiled, then gave me a playful punch on the arm. "You're doing great, Tommy. Keep your eyes forward." Her words stuck with me. Leah and Marcus were behind me now, and that's where I intended to keep them. As the weeks turned into months, I started feeling more like myself again. My routine with Angie's fitness classes kept me grounded, and the promotion at work gave me a renewed sense of purpose. But the biggest change was how I saw myself. For years, I defined so much of my identity around my marriage. Without it, I was forced to figure out who I was on my own. And honestly, I liked the guy I was becoming. One afternoon, Angie and I grabbed coffee after a particularly grueling workout. We talked about everything: work, hobbies, even our favorite TV shows. It felt easy, natural, like talking to an old friend. At one point she looked at me and said, "You're different now. More confident." I raised an eyebrow. "You think so?" She nodded. "When we first met, you carried yourself like the world was on your shoulders. Now, you've got a spark again. It's nice to see." Her words hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't wrong, I had changed. And for the first time I could see it too. Our conversation shifted to lighter topics, but something lingered in the back of my mind. For weeks, Angie had been a constant in my life. She'd seen me at my worst, pushed me to be better, and celebrated my small victories. As I walked back to my car that day, I couldn't shake the thought. Was I starting to feel something more than friendship for Angie? I wasn't sure if I was ready for that kind of leap, but the idea didn't scare me the way it might have a few months ago. That night, I called Nate and told him about the coffee. "You like her," he said matter-of-factly. "I don't know if it's that," I replied, though I could hear the uncertainty in my own voice. "Tommy, come on. You've been talking about her non-stop. She's clearly into you too. Maybe it's time to take a chance." "Maybe," I said, though I still wasn't sure. Later, as I lay in bed, I thought about Nate's words. Was I ready to move on? Could I trust myself to open up to someone new after everything I'd been through? The only thing I knew for sure was that Angie had been a light during one of the darkest periods of my life. Maybe Nate was right. Maybe it was time to take a chance. The idea of moving on with someone new felt strange at first, almost like I was breaking some unspoken rule. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't betraying anyone. Leah had made her choices, and it was time for me to make mine. The next time I saw Angie, I decided to test the waters. After class, instead of our usual casual chat, I asked her if she wanted to grab dinner. "Dinner, huh?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "Is this a post-workout meal or something else?" Her tone was teasing, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Something else," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I figured we've been hanging out long enough. Might as well make it official." Angie laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that made me feel lighter. "Okay, Tommy. Dinner it is." We met that evening at a small Italian restaurant near the gym. The conversation flowed easily like it always did, but there was a new energy between us. At one point she leaned forward and said, "So, what made you finally ask me out?" I hesitated, not sure how much to share. But then I remembered how Angie had always been honest with me, even when it wasn't what I wanted to hear. "You've been a big part of my life these past few months," I admitted. "You've helped me more than you probably realize. I guess I just wanted to see where this could go." She smiled, her eyes softening. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you did." By the end of the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Over the next few weeks, Angie and I started seeing each other more often. It wasn't anything serious. We both agreed to take things slow, but it felt good to have someone in my corner. One night, as we sat on her couch watching a movie, she turned to me and said, "You know, you're a lot stronger than you give yourself credit for." "Yeah?" I asked, smiling. "Yeah," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "You've been through hell and back, and you're still standing. That's something to be proud of." Her words stayed with me long after I left that night. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on solid ground. Things with Angie were going better than I could have hoped. For the first time in months, I felt like my life was moving forward instead of being stuck in the shadow of everything that happened with Leah. But as luck would have it, Leah wasn't ready to let go completely. It started with a package on my doorstep, a box wrapped in brown paper with my name written in Leah's familiar handwriting. I debated tossing it without opening it, but decided to see what was inside. It was a collection of items from our life together. An old photo of us at a football game, the watch I'd given her for our first anniversary, and a handwritten letter. The letter read, "Tommy, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry for everything. for the lies, the betrayal, and the way I've handled things since. Losing you has been the biggest regret of my life. I've been working on myself, trying to understand why I made the choices I did. I know I can't undo the past, but I hope you'll believe me when I say I've learned from it. You deserved better and I failed you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know how sorry I am. Take care of yourself. Leah. Reading it stirred up feelings I thought I'd buried: anger, sadness, and strangely enough, a little pity. Part of me wanted to believe she was sincere, but another part couldn't forget how easily she'd lied to me before. I called Nate to vent, and his reaction was exactly what I expected. Dude, don't fall for it. She's just trying to mess with your head again. She didn't ask for anything, though, I pointed out. Doesn't matter. She's fishing for a reaction. Don't give it to her. Nate was right. I put the letter back in the box and shoved it into the back of my closet. When I told Angie about it later, she nodded thoughtfully. It's good that she's trying to take accountability, but that doesn't mean you owe her anything. Her words stuck with me. Leah's apology didn't change anything. It didn't undo the pain she caused or erase the months I'd spent picking up the pieces. That night, I took the box out of my closet and carried it to the dumpster. I wasn't going to let Leah's regret pull me back into the past. When I got back to my apartment, I texted Angie. Thanks for helping me keep my head on straight. She replied almost instantly. Anytime. Proud of you, Tommy. And for the first time I truly felt free. Life finally felt like it was falling into place. My mornings started with a run, my workdays were productive, and my evenings were either spent with Angie or catching up with Nate. I was building a life that felt like my own, not a shadow of what I had before. Angie and I hadn't put a label on our relationship yet, but it was clear we cared about each other. She had this way of making even the hardest days seem lighter, and I found myself looking forward to every moment we spent together. One evening, Angie invited me to her place for dinner. She'd cooked, something simple but delicious, and afterward we sat on her balcony watching the city lights. You seem happy, she said, breaking the comfortable silence. I think I am, I admitted. For the first time in a long time. She smiled, her eyes searching mine. So, what's next for you, Tommy? What do you want out of life now? It was a good question and I didn't have a clear answer. I don't know, I said honestly. I guess I'm still figuring that out. But I know I don't want to live in the past anymore. I want to keep moving forward. She nodded, her expression thoughtful. You've come a long way, you know. It's not easy to rebuild after what you've been through. Thanks to you, I said with a small smile. Don't give me too much credit, she replied, laughing softly. You did the hard work. I just gave you a nudge. There was a pause and then she asked, do you think you'll ever be ready to love again? Her question caught me off guard, but instead of feeling overwhelmed I felt calm. I think I might be, I said, my voice steady. The look in her eyes was soft, almost vulnerable. Good, she said quietly. Because I think I might be ready too. We sat there in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with unspoken words. Finally I reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. I don't know where this will go, I said. But I'd like to find out. Her smile widened and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. As I drove home that night, I thought about how far I'd come since the day Leah left for Miami. It hadn't been easy, but every step had been worth it. For the first time in a long time I wasn't just surviving, I was living. The months that followed felt like a new chapter in my life. With each passing day, I let go of the hurt and anger that had once consumed me. Angie and I grew closer, and while we were taking things slow, there was no denying the connection we shared. One weekend we decided to go hiking, a change of pace from the gym and something Angie loved. As we climbed higher, the trail opened up to a stunning overlook. We stopped to take in the view, the city spread out below us and the sun setting on the horizon. This is beautiful, I said, taking a deep breath of the crisp mountain air. It is, Angie replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Then she turned to me, her expression serious but warm. You know, I wasn't sure about us at first. I didn't want to be a rebound or someone to help you forget the past. You're not, I said quickly, meeting her eyes. She smiled. I know that now. I see how far you've come and it's inspiring. You didn't just bounce back, you've built something better for yourself. And I feel lucky to be a part of it. Her words hit me harder than I expected, and for a moment I couldn't speak. Finally I said, "You've been a big part of why I've been able to move forward, Angie. I don't think I'd be here without you." We stood there for a while, watching the sun dip below the skyline, and I realized how much my life had changed since the day Leah walked out of it. It wasn't about revenge or proving a point anymore. It was about finding peace, building a life I was proud of, and being with someone who valued me for who I was. As we headed back down the trail, Angie slipped her hand into mine, and I couldn't help but smile. When we reached the bottom, I turned to her and said, "So what's next for us?" She grinned. "Anything we want." For the first time in a long time I felt completely free. And that's where my story ends, or maybe where it truly begins. Thanks for following along, everyone. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that life doesn't stop for anyone. People will hurt you, betray you, and let you down. But if you keep moving forward, you'll find new reasons to hope, new people to trust, and new chances to be happy. I thought losing Leah was the end of my story. Turns out it was just the start of a better one.